the group leaders. Councillor Maguire. Maybe Councillor Maguire is just not with us yet. Have we got Councillor Irvine there?
Yeah, Mark, I have no apologies to date, but I have a funny feeling that Chris Smith, he had an issue last night that he had to go to A&E. It's all right now, but he could be popping in and out. I don't see him there at the moment. So if you just put Chris Smith down as an apology.
Yes,
thanks.
no problem. Yeah. Councillor Garrity.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, no apologies, just Councillor Gannon's going to be running a wee bit late into the meeting. Thank you.
No problem. And Councillor Robinson, any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any other apologies? Maybe if anyone's aware of any from the Sinn Féin group?
Councillor Maguire here, Mark. Apologies for logging in on the minute there.
Yes, Councillor Maguire.
No apologies from the Sinn Féin group, and Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. And no other apologies there. So we'll just move on to item 2.
Sorry. Chair. Councillor Keenan has sent his apologies. He's working, he can't get out of it. And Councillor Coffey again's having the same difficulties as last night logging on. So I've contacted IT support. Hopefully they'll get through them shortly.
Great. We'll record that, and they're onto that there, Councillor. That's okay. Item 2 is to sign minutes and confidential minutes of the previous meeting held on the 3rd of June 2021, and that has been done. So we'll move on to item 3. Any declarations of interest, members? I don't see no hands there, so that's okay.
Sorry, Chair. I was trying to put the hand up there. Just in relation to item 6.1, there's 2 individual items, 2.2 and 2.56, which relate to Southwest College, or mentioned Southwest College. So as an employee, I'm declaring on that, but I'd like to speak just on some of the other issues involved in that, but just declaring an interest on those 2 points. Thank you.
Okay, that'll be recorded. We'll tick now item 4, matters arising. So we'll go through the previous minutes of the 3rd of June, page 1. Councillor Campbell there, were you looking in?
Just to declare an interest, Southwest College have just joined the meeting there. Apologies.
Oh, have you now, Glenn? That's great. We'll do that.
Same declaration. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, we'll do that for you. Okay, page 1 of the minutes, page 2, page 3, and page 4, page 5.
Page 5, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Deehan.
Yeah, just item 4.2. On estate matters, we had a proposal that we would convene a meeting, a group meeting to look at vandalism in the area, and I just wondered if that had been progressed any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deehan.
Through the chair, well, there is a further report on vandalism issues in tonight's meeting, which again, I suppose, gives us, I wouldn't like to say a good starting point, but we have now quantified the range of issues that we've been dealing with over the last couple of months right across the district. So I would hope that we will work with PCSP and work to get that meeting convened, hopefully over the summer period. So I don't have a specific date at this point in time, but yes, it is definitely on the agenda. And as I say, we wanted to, there was a few isolated incidents that we became aware of, and then thought it was useful to try and collate all of that information and present it to members. So the point is still relevant and is in progress.
Thank you, Celine. Are you happy enough, Councillor, with that?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and there is a report, as Celine has said. We'll get a look at that later. Page number 6, page number 7, page number 8, page number 9, page 10, and page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, and the last page, page 16. Okay, thank you, members. We will now go to
Sorry, Chair, just in relation to page 15 there.
Yes.
Just it was the issues at Ravensbury, and I know that at least one of the residents has been back and forward with our own planning department on that. So I'm just wondering, has there been any progress on that or any update on that particular issue? There doesn't seem to be anything attached.
No, I have no update on that.
Chair, if I can just say, no, Chair, we're currently working on that at the moment. There are a lot of issues, planning issues, environmental health issues, and so on that we're trying to work through at the minute, and indeed building control issues. And so we're trying to get a dossier of everything of the history of that site, and we will follow up on that action. So we will in the near future in relation to Ravensbury.
Okay, thank you, John, for that. We'll now move to item number 5 on our agenda, the Community and Wellbeing Directorate reports. 5.1 is to consider report on the revised street naming and numbering policy, including dual language street signs, which is paper A. John, have you?
John's on mute there, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Is that all right now? Yeah. Chair, the purpose of the report is to seek committee approval for the revised street naming and numbering policy. I suppose it's really brought about from the motion which was passed, adopted by the Council in February of this year in relation to the dual language element of the policy. And I suppose we took an opportunity to look at the policy holistically, and I'll come on to the dual language element of it in a little moment. Section 2.2 of the report there gives an outline of the key changes, and just want to highlight to members some of those key changes. It would be normal, I suppose, in relation to where we were changing a policy, that we would provide a report to members which would track the changes. A lot of the formatting of the existing policy was changed, and therefore, in order to track the changes, when I got a copy of the track changes, nearly everything in the document was coloured in the track change in documents. So I felt it better to give members a summary of those changes. Some of the body of the report has been moved into annexes, and Annex C, it details the dual naming street signs procedure, which I'll come on to. Can I draw members' attention to section 16 of the report, which highlights budgets and the reference to budget in relation to it. It is, you will see in the report, in the actual report itself, not in the policy, but you see in the financial resource implications that the cost of an individual sign is approximately £300 for the supply and installation of individual signs. To date, we have 23 road names approved for dual language. And just because it is 23 road names, there are a number of signs associated with each, depending on the size of the road or the street in which the policy has been adopted for. Those 23 road names require a total of 136 signs at an approximate cost of 41,000. So there is a cost involved in this, and currently we have quite a substantial number of requests based on the new policy, or on the new policy, on the new motion which was adopted, and for which the policy will look after. So I suppose section 16 outlines the need for a budget for the administration and the purchase of street naming, and we will install that signage in the order in which the applications are approved by committee, subject to the continuing availability of the financial budget and the human resources in order to do it. Moving on to the main item for which the policy was really looked at, and it does follow the motion which was adopted by Council in February, and that was to change the policy so that it requires a 15% or more of residents responding positively to being sufficient to erect the signage. And there was this term subject to residual discretion and protections mitigations as appropriate. Annex C of the actual policy itself outlines the introduction and the legislation for the dual language street signs. but section on page 14 of the policy, it details the procedure by which you would go through. And if I can draw members' attention to the main changes that have taken place in there, included from 2.6 onwards, it does detail where 15% or more of the occupiers of that street have indicated that they're in favour of the erection of a second language sign, then such a sign may be erected, subject to the residual discretion and protections mitigations, which are highlighted in section 2.8 of the policy. If that minimum threshold of 15% is not met, then the application process will end. However, if it is met, the council shall still retain the residual discretion to erect or not to erect a street sign, and there will be various considerations which council may wish to take into account in making that decision, and that would be the views of the occupiers of the street, where they've indicated that they're not in favour, consideration of the local context of the application, any other council policies or strategies, or all material considerations relating to the application. So I suppose what the policy is effectively saying here is that where 15% is met and there is one or more objections to the erection of a dual language sign, that will be notified to council, a committee, and the members themselves will be able to take a decision on each individual case in relation to that, in order to make a decision as to whether the dual language sign should be erected or not. In relation to because the policy is now being reviewed in light of the motion which was passed in February, and it does require a change in the policy itself, and the timeline for the policy is included at section 2.3 of the report. So it will require a consultation process, and we hope to undertake that consultation process subject to approval of this report in the period July to October, for a 12-week consultation process on this draft. And then we will update the documents on the basis of the consideration of those consultation responses, and hope to present to members a draft final policy for approval at this committee in December of 21. Therefore, Chair, the recommendation is that the Council approves the draft street naming and numbering policy, including the dual language street signs, for the purposes of issuing the 12-week public consultation period, and that is for the consideration of members. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that. John, just before we move to the speakers, there was a message there. Can we get IT to contact Councillor McCann? That's already been looked into. And just call on user 2, if we could have you identify yourself, please. Call on user 2. Just no response there at present. Will we give it a wee minute and see, or we'll give it a wee minute and see? Just if call on user 2 could maybe come on just and identify yourself first, please. Now, folks, we've heard John's report and the recommendation, and we have had extensive debate on this issue before. So yeah, the recommendation is to approve the draft street naming and numbering policy for the purposes of issuing for the 12-week consultation period. So we'll bring in Councillor McCaffrey there first.
Gurmagat, Carly, Gurmagat, John. Couple of road hatch na wilam when the Corey or a Gaelic Shaw, a base harter from Monaco, because no me na go. Vekin, Nadalti, Bun Scholar, August Man Scholar, a William Gaelic Oku. Nimor Aver, Scholar, Okmar Aver, no man, Comersaja, E and Changa, School and Changa, Lefek Islands of Rimshire, Pibli, August, Gwilliam Gaelic, Mar, Co, Changa, Leshen, Verla, Tashir, Co, Mage, August Bra, Fekalok, or Fud Fad, Arganter, August Ta Docus, Algan Gunartoisha, Shaw, Tishkinch, and Fubble, Aaron Ducus, at all, a file, and our Loganyamoka, August Go Curry, She, Lahusich, and Lagan, the Gaelic, August Dini, Excreve, and a Shoti. But while we have wasted a goal, Le Gok, Dinya, a Haki Lumlesh, and Rune Shaw, August Leshen, Coria, August Ifigina Coria, Arnoi, Ni Fedger, Changa, Eha, Ok Tavok, or Lai, Le Kohu, Kulta, Fosta. Gurmagat, Chair, and thanks to John for the report. He's clearly outlined in the report the appropriate mitigations that the Council will have, and the resolution that will be available to us in cases of where there is some controversy. I think what I like about the new signs that will hopefully be right across our district and the communities and areas that wish to have them, is that our local primary and secondary pupils who have Irish as a subject or as a medium will see the language in use in the public realm. That's the very important part. It will add to the visibility of the language. And although the Anglicisation spelling will be on top of the Irish, Irish is of an equal size and equally visible, and hopefully this will increase the community's knowledge of the origins of many of our place names and townlands and our own surnames, and then this will in turn hopefully increase the use of these forms when people are writing in their addresses. Now, I want to propose the recommendation of the report. I think it is adequately detailed all of the things that I was included in the original motion, and I would be disappointed. I can see there are some hands up, and I would be disappointed at this stage if after all of the discussion and all of the talks and the fact that we've had these honest, mature discussions as councillors of this council area, that there would still be opposition even when the appropriate mitigations have been clearly detailed. You know, the opposers to this language movement, to this cultural expression, are wrong on the issue. I have to say, you know, we don't want to be just monolingual. We don't want to be monocultural. We benefit from having the various cultures all across the world. It adds to music and dance and film and the songs and to food and drink and everything like that. So we should be aiming to be multicultural, and we have, of course, in the Irish language, such a rich and vast heritage that spreads back thousands of years, approximately 1,000 years before the English language even existed. So I'm happy to propose the recommendations, and I would hope that other fellow members of this council would do the same. Gormagat.
Sorry, thank you.
Chair,
Councillor
yes.
Wilson.
Well, I am not objecting to cultural expression, but I would like to ask if the officers have any idea as to the cost that this is going to entail. When the figure or the percentage was 67, that could have been classed as a reasonable figure. But really 15% might just be, it is actually similar to 0%. You know, they can take it in and look at it whatever way they like, but they when it comes down to 15%, anybody on that road that objects or on that street that objects is going to find themselves in a very cold house in that area. So I would think that that will not happen. They would feel intimidated if they are likely to query the figures. I'm wondering if there are going to be any Ulster Scots signs included on this signage. And I would also like to, maybe I'm wrong, but the minutes that I seen on the cost of the few roads that were already priced, I would reckon that it will cost at least £500,000, if not heading on for £1 million, for when we take our major towns, villages, and the number of roads and that are in our Fermanagh and Omagh council area. I believe this will come as some shock to the ratepayers out there, and I believe it needs to be highlighted to let them see what is being pushed through in their name. And if there is any objections in coming to our council as to be debated, well, we don't need a debate, and we know the result before it will appear in front of our councillors. So to me, this is totally uncalled for. It's money that could have been put to a lot better use. And I will be objecting to it, not simply because of what it been the Irish language, but as I say, the 67% was a reasonable figure. And to me, the 15% is just a wipeout of any percentage. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you for them comments there, Councillor Wilson. Just on the pricing one, John, there is some information in there in the report, but am I right in thinking there'd be a more detailed look into
Well,
down the line on that? Is that?
Chair, what we propose is that for every application that would be made, that we would detail the cost to members, so that when an analysis of the route is actually done, of the street or the road for which the dual language is required, is that there would be a determination of how many signs are required for that. On the average of the number of, on the basis of the 23 signs that we have already approved at committee, they relate to 136 signs, which is an average of 6 signs per application. And if you take the 300 £300 per sign, you're talking, I suppose, about each application costing on average, based on the experience of the 23 road names that we have, a cost of £1,800 per application. But like I say, for each individual case, it will be noted to members in the report as to what the exact financial contribution is made, and members can make a decision on that basis.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Thomas O'Reilly, sorry, is next there.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm quite happy to second this, that we move along with this. We have talked about it and we have debated it for quite some time. And I think it's time to move to action and to actually allow those that wish to have bilingual signs to actually have some work done on it. A couple of points that I want to make, Chair. At 3.2, when we talk about the human resource element of this, and we have been talking about costs there, and it says that there is to establish who lives on a street, there is a visit by personnel to the Belfast Electoral Office on an appointment basis to establish that. Surely we are in an enlightened age that every time somebody puts in a proposal for a street, we don't need to run physically to Belfast to ascertain who lives on a street. I suppose, bearing in mind not alone the use of technology, but not everybody is on the register either. So I'd like to understand why we're listing that as a cost. The second thing I'd like to just highlight, Chair, is that we did put up some signs on the road names around the district, and I would like to have somebody look at the quality of those signs, because quite a few of those signs are down and hanging, and you know, one that as you come out of the junction, and John will be very aware, no doubt of it, as you come out of the junction from the Canally Road there at the bridge at the end of Derlin, the sign has been at a 45-degree angle for the last 6 months. So I appreciate people coming to that corner doesn't have an awful lot of time to read signs, but at the same time, I think that's a sign that should be put back to a horizontal degree. But Chair, getting back to just the dual Irish language sign, you know, maybe that we can look at these signs and see the quality of what we are putting up around the district. But the human resource one, I'd be interested to hear the logic behind it.
Thank you, Councillor, for seconding that there. Now, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, what Councillor O'Reilly says is actually true. The electoral office do require us actually to go for a visit to Belfast in order to look at the electoral register, and there is no electronic means by which we can do that, and it is something that we have had difficulty with, and especially during this time of COVID, we have been unable to do that because the electoral office is opened, I think only opened on yesterday, on the 5th of July. So it has been a major difficulty for us during the COVID period. But that is the process, and it is something that we will get into conversation with the electoral office in order to view that. And it is a labour-intensive exercise as it is at the moment. So it is a real issue. In relation to the quality of signs, and I know the sign that Councillor O'Reilly is talking about, was that it was hit, I would imagine, by a vehicle. So it wasn't, I don't think, any quality of sign would withstand that. But it is, I do understand, I think, that we have recently gone out for a tender process for our signage, and hopefully the quality will be included as part of the assessment of that.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, and I appreciate John has said that we'll get into the conversation, but I'm quite happy if it adds some weight to make the proposal here through the committee that we do engage with the electoral office That is absolutely scandalous that they insist that we run personnel every so often down to Belfast to look at a register. That's scandalous sort of carry on. And so I'm proposing here, Chair, that we do engage that conversation with them to facilitate an electronic means to be able to do it. We are in 2021 after all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this has been well debated before, and there has been 2 votes on it, and the council has voted that we amend, so we can't change that. However, the Ulster Unionist Group do have serious concerns around the assurances. We did have a councillor who proposed this motion say there was no Gaeilgeoirs under the bed and jail cells would not be erected where it was not wanted. However, this is not qualified or quantified at any stage in the outworkings of this policy amendment, in particular around the residual discretion and protection and mitigations as appropriate. There's no quantity there, there's no qualification there. It seems as though it's going to be referred back to council to vote on it. Given the breakdown of this council and the way that it generally will vote, we will probably have Sinn Féin, SDLP and the 4 independents voting for Irish language signage. Cross-Community Labour will probably abstain. Alliance, they're in a bit of a dilemma, considering they voted for this in Belfast. Derry and Strabane and Fermanagh, they voted for the amendment, but in Lisburn and Castlereagh, they actually voted against the motion. So it's quite strange. I don't actually know where they stand on this. And ourselves in the DUP will obviously oppose it. The Ulster Unionist Party will only be opposing it in areas where we feel that the vast majority of the community do not want the signage erected. But we can't find that safeguards within this policy, and we have serious concerns that it hasn't been quantified or qualified some safeguards into protecting communities that do not wish the signs erected. Those who do want it erected, we will support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Now, folks, we have had extensive debate on this, and I don't like putting any councillor out. We will go through the hands that are up, but I believe this is going to have to go to a vote tonight. So we have it proposed and seconded, and we will just take a quick comment from the remaining councillors. Councillor O'Coffey, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I wanted to just preface my comments by saying that, like, I'm an Irish speaker myself. My grandfather was a native Irish speaker from the Gaeltacht, hence my name, which I still spell in Irish. And I have always been a huge enthusiast for the revival of the culture of associated with the Irish language. It's a very rich culture, something that means a huge amount to us all. The one thing I would say in this is I think it's important that we don't single out the Irish language in a way, and I think that this policy does that, so that's a good thing. I'd noticed that it extends to other languages, but obviously it is primarily about the Irish language as the main Indigenous language, as it may be called, and it is undoubtedly a reference point for us all. My own street sign is bilingual. I was instrumental in achieving that, and many other street signs in this council area. But I do have issues around lowering the bar, as far as I'm concerned, on the 15%. I think it sends the wrong signal out. I do think people can be won over to agree with the language, to see its worth, to recognize that it belongs to all of us, like all languages do, and that it's tied to this area. And it is no threat to any community. And that's where I would like us to take this language. That is really where I'm coming from. I want to see the language embraced by all. Sadly, unfortunately, it is a political football to some extent. We've already heard very divergent opinions on it. And I think that this policy really makes things possibly worse from that perspective. In particular, we now see a discretionary policy in there, which really potentially underwrites anything that's been achieved. It's very amorphous. You can't see what it means. But the key question to me is that the very end of the report, page 15, it says that any decisions will come back to council for decision. So we could have a situation where 15% on a particular street votes for Irish language signs, 85% vote against the Irish language signs, and this council will debate whether we impose Irish language signs. And I don't see how that is going to do any good for my language, the Irish language. I don't see how that is going to do bring us forward anywhere. We need to really bring people with us, not to push the language where people are not ready for it yet. And I think everyone can embrace it. It's got a shared history and so on. So I'm just really nervous around what this is going to do. I feel it's going to politicize this beautiful language and all the cultures associated with it. And I can't in all conscience support that, or I cannot support, in fact, this discretionary arbitrary power, which isn't explained. It doesn't explain when the decision will go one way or the other. There's no guarantees, and I think it'll only create more debates in this council about every single one of these, and that is only going to poison attitudes to the language even further. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coffey. Now, Councillor McCaffrey, you've been in, so I'm just going to get Councillor Irvine next, if that's all right. Councillor Irvine.
Fine, I don't mind jumping over metaphorically, Councillor McCaffrey. I'll do that. Look, Councillor McCloughery has said the majority of what we as a group want to say. It's a council decision, but we have issues with regard to the rollout, and we will stand and look at what the consultation actually brings back from the community, because those concerns might be brought forward the community. We're not against the language. We can see where the cultural value of the language sits. We just have concerns that it may be put in places that it may not actually sit really well. I've got a few questions for John just on practical turnout. One, if you're doing, I suppose, a census of who lives on a street or a road, are you cross-referring with LPS as well, the rates database? That's one question. Because I presume that would actually indicate which houses are habitable. Won't necessarily say how many occupants are in them, but it may narrow down your search of who you actually have to go tracking for. That's one question. And the second question is, when you take down a sign that's in single language, what happens to it? I'm proposing maybe you auction it off to people who would want a sign of the road that they live on. Because if we're going to have this cost for actually doing it, whatever we can recoup back, it might be well. And there are people actually who would bid and buy street names because of sentimental value and for other reasons. So 2 questions, John.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine.
I have a
John.
comment at the end once you come back to me.
Chair, in relation to the practical workout of this and the cross-reference to the rates also, no, the policy, the current policy that we have is actually that we check with the electoral office. Now, if members wishes to do a cross-reference exercise with the LPS, that can certainly be added into the policy at your discretion. In relation to what happens to the signs when they're taken down, it would be assumed that they would be disposed of. I suppose they could be auctioned off. I suppose there are issues though that if a member of a street or a road were to put that in their garden, it would be confusing maybe for the signs, the official signs that were put up in dual language. That's the only thing I'd say about that. But it is something that could be considered in the realms of the policy.
Well, I'm always looking to how we can actually maximize our financial return, and there are people out there that would pay for them. I take on board your comment in regard to somebody erecting a sign close to another sign that's been erected, but maybe an instance. Look, in this instance, I think the Ulster Unionist as a grouping, we have reservations in regard to just what's written into the draft at the moment. We'll have to see how it plays out in the consultation, but we will be abstaining in the vote on this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Green.
Thank you. There's just a follow up on Councillor O'Reilly on the point, and I'll be very, very quick on it. I would totally agree about the standard material that has been signs, the original road signs. They're breaking all over the place. I've reported them, but it seems to be plastic and I think if we are going down the road, we have to look at the quality. That's all I'll say.
Yep, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Gormaga Caherly, thank you. Yes, glad to hear that news that there is a review, someone going in place for the existing street signage, because there's one at Edenmore Crescent in Tempo that I was in touch with during the week. But just on this policy, this is positive. This is a positive move that the Irish-speaking community have been looking for, and I do think it is a shame, especially when you hear comments like those from Councillor McCloughery stating that, you know, how a breakdown would be and how a breakdown would go, and just absolutely stating that the unionist parties would always be voting against this. You know, I just think that that is a shame. Like I say, I think this is a positive change for the Irish-speaking community, who have met with us through the working groups, and the biggest ask that they had was around visibility for the language. There is no intention from anybody here to be erecting street signage where people don't want it, where the community doesn't want it, but it is just to make the process, which has been a very difficult process to date, easier for those communities who do want it, people who want to see the street signage. And that the Irish language, the Irish speaking community come from every denomination and none at all. On this idea, Councillor O'Coffey there talked about imposing, and you know, he had said previously about forcing it down people's throats. You know, I just think that's shameful, really shameful kind of language to be using around something very positive. And in terms of this idea of political footballs, you know, every time, I'm afraid to say this, but every time that unionism opposes something, Corlier O'Coffey seems to term that as being a political football. These are rights issues. These are issues around rights, and I don't think we should make any apology for that. Just in terms of the electoral office, just the requirement there. What about people, you know, young people over 16, but who wouldn't be on the electoral register? Where is their voice here? I'd just like to know that, Gormaga.
Thank you, Siobhan. Well, there has a proposal to engage with the electoral office. It was made by Councillor O'Reilly. Could we have a look at that, what Siobhan has mentioned? Or
Well, Chair, I suppose the point that Councillor Curry makes is that the people under 16s wouldn't be included on the electoral register, and therefore wouldn't be on the electoral office, and therefore they wouldn't be included in the poll that we would take of people. It is on the basis of the information of what is proposed, is on the basis of to engage with the people in the electoral office. That, you know, any other way, I suppose, you know, Councillor Irvine, I think it was, that mentioned you know, about cross-referencing it to the LPS. That is a process that we could go on, that we could take account of. But it would be very difficult to take a poll to actually go in and canvass into a specific area. There are times when this could be on a specific road that could be miles and miles long. And in order to go out and physically canvass for every member of every household would be a very time-consuming process.
Okay, thank you. Now, folks, there's more hands that went up, but the last speaker on this is Adam, and then we're going to vote. Councillor Gannon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thanks for the report and the work done on the policy to John and all the staff involved. Just going to make a brief point here, Chair, is that Irish is a minority language, and I know many people and myself would like to see it grow and become more visible. And so by its nature of being a minority language, majoritarianism doesn't work, which is one of the reasons why we're here having this discussion, and we've had this discussion multiple times, and it's one of the reasons why we're changing policy, one of the many reasons. But funnily enough, I do see the biggest benefit for this for Ulster Scots, to allow it to become more visible. I believe we don't have any Ulster Scots signs in the district at the minute. And again, it has a smaller uptake than Irish, so a bigger benefit will also come to Ulster Scots. And I'd love to see that part of our culture, our shared culture, be expressed and seen more widely. Councillor Coffey does make a very good point, though, around how this can become quite political, but that's where we as elected reps need to come in, discuss language, culture and signs in this case very maturely, which many of us have done tonight, and it's good to hear that. The last point I'll make is on Councillor Irvine's proposed auction or sale of old signs. I think that's an excellent idea. I know many people who would also like to do something like that if it became available. So that's something that should definitely be explored, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, folks, we had the recommendation
I'm
proposed
really
and
sorry,
seconded.
Chair. Sorry, I believe that.
Well, now, yeah, you were already in, Councillor McCaffrey, at the start.
But you did say now. Sorry, we're talking about language. I just would like to be accurate in this. You did
Well,
say
just a sentence, Councillor, because we are moving to a vote.
So look, just to wrap things up, and I have seen the divergent views that have been in case now. I would say on Councillor O'Coffey's part that while yes, his surname is spelt like Irish, he is omitting a fada. I hope after tonight he refines that fada again. And you know, we've heard some different views there from the Ulster Unionist Party, from objecting to abstaining. So you know, it is maybe progress in that sense that hopefully someday they won't look at it as the Irish language and political party breakdown, because I think that is completely a primitive way to view this language, which, as I've mentioned before, it's the Indigenous language, but it's also everywhere around us, in our own surnames, in our townlands and our place names. And no political party or politician has hijacked the Irish language. The language hijacks the people. We're all humans of this language. It belongs to every single person, every single citizen on the island. And I am looking forward to the day that we can have more political debates, perhaps around the constitutional question in Irish. And it would do well to remind some people that the statue outside Stormont of what would be seen as a hero to many people within unionism of Edward Carson. Edward Carson spoke Irish. Daniel O'Connell, who advocated for obviously the emancipation of Catholics, he has given many speeches, as on the record at that time, as saying that he'd be happy to see the disuse of the Irish language. So political party or religion or any kind of arbitrary difference like that is no way to measure.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Councillor. We need to move this item on, and there will just be more debate. So, if members are happy, I want to take this to a vote. So I'll just go through the roll call with you as members, and we're voting on the recommendation that was proposed by Councillor McCaffrey, seconded by Councillor Thomas O'Reilly. Councillor Armstrong is the first. Councillor Diana Armstrong. Councillor Alec Baird.
Abstain.
Councillor Paul Blake.
For.
Councillor Buchanan is against myself. Councillor Glenn Campbell.
Abhaver Caherly for Chairman.
Councillor Sean Clark. Councillor John Coyle.
For.
Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Lahey for.
Councillor Josephine Deehan.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Abhaver for.
Councillor Sean Donnelly.
For.
Thanks, Sean. Councillor Stephen Donnelly. Councillor Keith Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Deborah Erskine.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Feely.
For.
Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. Councillor Adam Gannon.
For.
Councillor Mary Gardaí.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Robert Irvine.
Abstain.
Councillor Keenan is an apology. Councillor Catherine Kelly.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Plodging Kelly.
For.
Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Lahey, for.
Councillor Emmett McAleer.
For.
Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Son the Malta, for.
Councillor Stephen McCann.
For.
Councillor John McLaughlin.
Abstain.
Councillor Barry McElduff.
Lahey, for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gavin McPhillips.
For, Chair.
Councillor Donald Coffey.
Abstain.
Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
For.
Councillor Alan Rainey.
Chair.
Councillor Paul Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Chris Smith. Maybe Chris hasn't joined us.
In, Chair. No,
Abstain there,
I'm
yeah.
in now, Chair.
Thanks, Chris.
Abstain.
Councillor Bernice Swift.
For.
Councillor Earl Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Howard Thornton.
Abstain.
Councillor Victor Warrington.
Abstain.
And Councillor Wilson, Bert Wilson.
Against.
Thank you, members. Just in the chat there, we'll go back through. Yep, we'll just go back through them few we missed. Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Abstain, Chair. Thank you.
And Councillor Sean Clark.
Hello.
Hello, Sean. Yes.
Yeah, for.
Thank you, Sean. And Anne-Marie, Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. Just try again, Anne-Marie, please. Yep, is it okay to take it in the chat? I think that's everyone. Stephen Donnelly. We'll just do a total here, folks. Bear with us. Okay, members, thank you for that. We have 23 for, 6 against, and 9 abstentions. So that proposal is carried. I do thank the members for working with us there. I know there's some hands that didn't get in, but we would like to move it on. Now, we had another proposal by Councillor O'Reilly regarding engaging with the electoral office.
I'll second that, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Feely.
Are we
all agreeable just that engagement goes ahead? Is everyone agreed? Okay, thank you, members, for that. Now we'll move on our agenda to item 5.2, which is a report to consider a report on animal welfare, and it's paper B.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, there's two aspects to the report. One is to provide an update, I think it's an annual update on animal welfare activities, and also to provide information on the consultation known as Finn's Law regarding introduction of additional protection for service animals. Just in relation to our activity in relation to animal welfare, members will be aware that Fermanagh District Council staff are responsible for the enforcement of the welfare of animals across the entire Western region, which includes Fermanagh District Council, Derry City and Strabane District Council, and Mid-Ulster District Council. And you will see there, Chair, the activity in relation to for the year 2021 at section 2.1.2 of the report. Also at 2.1.3, there are a number of examples of successful prosecutions which are provided for members' consideration, and there are many others. In relation to Finn's Law, this was brought about in the UK following an attack on a service animal, a police dog, and where defendants were charged under the Welfare Animals Act, but they were able to say that that they were only protecting themselves, and as a result of that, the Animal Welfare Services Animals Bill was passed in June of 19, and the Finn's Law, in this case the Department of Agriculture, you will see there in Appendix 1 of the report, are planning to introduce this legislation similar to Finn's Law to make it an offence to harm or abuse the service animals, and we've been asked for our views on the consultation process. The consultation document is included, and so it's recommended that the council agrees to the increase. Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned that the central support cost for the administration of the Western region for animal welfare, that it is planned to increase it from 5% to 10%, with that coming to Mananoma District Council for the administration of the scheme. Chair, the recommendation is that the council agrees to the increase in the central support charge cost to 10% to support the FODC's role as lead council for animal welfare, and that we would respond to the online consultation in support of the new legislation to support the legislation to protect service dogs in advance of the response, which is the date of the 1st of August 21.
Okay, thank you. An extensive report there, members. So if we could move to propose and second, please. Councillor O'Coffey's first there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This issue around the service animals, I'm not at all convinced by the language that's been used here. I note it states that service animals, i.e. dogs and horses, need to restrain suspects. The reality is, from anyone who watches news or even current affairs, is that, for example, you only have to think of the BLM, Black Lives Matter protesters, who are baton charged by officers on horseback outside 10 Downing Street for standing up on the issue of brutality towards people of color in our society. We also have famously the police charge on horseback of miners during the miners' strike. And we know that these effectively are instances of the police weaponizing animals. And I think that that is the practice that needs to be stopped. I obviously disagree with anyone attacking an animal, but I have to say that using animals in this way is, I feel, putting them at risk, and it's unnecessary. I think it's only meant to really strike fear into the hearts of those who often are only protesting about civil rights, trade unionists on strike, others, and I cannot at all see why we would be supporting a measure that seeks to normalize a situation where people have no right then to defend themselves when animals are being weaponized against them. So I don't agree with this proposal, and I would like to propose that we don't be supportive of any measures coming from Minister Poots on this issue. He's following the line from the Tories in London. This is not a line that is rooted in care for our society or those who are protesting to secure basic rights. So I don't think we should be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would concur with the sentiments of Councillor O'Coffey there. I think this, following kind of hot on the heels of the police crackdown bill, which disgracefully made its way through Parliament there yesterday, this is just another attempt at cracking down on people's rights. And Councillor O'Coffey quite rightly listed a number of occasions where service animals were used as weapons. They were weaponized, and that was the rule. And again, like, it's the language used within the report even provided back to us under 2.2.4, where it notes that people will no longer be able to claim that they were simply protecting themselves. So, is there a case? There's now no case for self-defense. That, to me, is unacceptable. Again, when you're talking about the majority of protests which are being clamped down on by this Tory government, that they're dealing with environmental issues, with trade union issues, with issues of rights to do with race and racism, to do with human rights abuses, to do with issues that oftentimes the government and the governing bodies have a hand in. it doesn't sit well with me. And again, today even we saw a further correction of a miscarriage of justice in England with the charges being dropped against some of the Stockwell Six. You know, the ongoing erosion of human rights under the Tories can't be tolerated. It needs to be stood up against. And I think even on first reading and on reading through the proposals, they do seem quite disproportionate and unbalanced, with no protection of redress being made available for people who maybe are partaking in either peaceful protest, or for people whose actions may have some explanation, whether it be that they're compromised or they're under a specific condition, under influence of a particular substance. You know, these matters seemingly have all been ignored. So I'm quite happy to second Councillor O'Coffey's motion. I don't think we should be
Okay.
looking at this.
Thank
We
you,
need to
Councillor.
look at we need to take in the human rights element, and I don't think that's been considered at all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Howard Thornton is next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Diana Armstrong has been on to me that you get IT to contact her, please.
Yes, that'll be done. Thank you.
Tonight, please. With regard to this, I disagree. The use of horses in Northern Ireland, I'm unaware of it. It would appear more to be dogs that are affected in Northern Ireland. But with regard to what's being said, this is a public order tool which works very effective, and any discretions away from that towards human rights and so on, there's plenty of ways to make complaints and get investigations against it. So I would be fully in support of the recommendations laid. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Smith.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to interpret that Councillor Thornton has proposed, and I just want to second his sentiment there, Chair.
Now, we do have two proposals, folks. We'll just take Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Deacon, and then we'll put these to the floor. So, Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Sorry, Chair, having trouble unmuting there. As Councillor Thornton has stated, there isn't really much use of horses. There's 2 horses on the island of Ireland. They're shared between An Garda Síochána and the PSNI, and they're generally used for peaceful protests and other such events. The dogs are ultimately, their handler is responsible for the actions of the dog, and if the dog is deployed and breaches someone's rights, the handler is responsible. This action is to protect the animals from the actions of people. Now, Finn was a dog that was dealing with people who, as Councillor McAleer alludes to, they were under influence, but they stabbed the dog anyway. That is not an excuse to stab an animal. It's simply doing its job that it's been trained to do. And I would totally support this motion that these animals get the protection. If their handlers or riders do breach someone's human rights, they should face the full vigour of the law, as should anybody who breaks the law.
Right, thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. And finally, Councillor Deacon, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank John for his report. And I'm speaking now as an animal lover. And, you know, we did have the debate last night regarding rights of nature. I believe in the protection of all living creatures and living species. And I do agree with Councillor O'Coffey that unfortunately animals, particularly dogs, have been weaponized. And we have seen footage of police dogs being used in a hugely inappropriate way to attack civil rights protesters. And I certainly wouldn't condone that. I also wouldn't condone anyone attacking a service dog in a violent or aggressive way. But I think that mitigating circumstances always need to be considered. I think that we can reflect this commentary that we've had tonight in our consultation response, so that, you know, these very real issues can be highlighted, and it's simply not going to be a tick box exercise from Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. You know, there's a lot of thinking that is required around this, and certainly any blanket law which prevents an individual from defending themselves from an animal attack, whether it be a pet or a service animal, is certainly not something that I would be in favour of. So could we please reflect all these comments in our consultation response, please, Chair? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And John is happy enough to take that forward. Now, folks, all the hands are cleared there. So the first proposal that was seconded was by Councillor O'Coffey, seconded by Councillor McAleer, which is that we wouldn't agree with the recommendations. So if those in support of that could raise their hands, please. So we've Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor McAleer. So I will take it that everyone else is against. Now, if you could lower your hands again. And can I take it then that the proposal, which was proposed by Councillor Thornton and seconded by Councillor Smith, is agreed by everyone, with the exception of Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor McAleer? All agreed? Thank you, members. So that is passed. Now, just before we move from this, Councillor Gannon contacted me with a matter of AOB, which is relevant at this point, and we will just deal with that very quick now. Councillor Gannon, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be as brief as I can. I recently met with Bright Eyes Animal Sanctuary, and I know we have Grove Hill and Omagh that does similar work in that part of the district. We currently have a very good working relationship with them. We've given 181 dogs from the council over the past 3 years, and this number of dogs is only going to increase in future, and most need neutered, vaccinated, wormed, and need to be looked after. You know, food, heating, lighting, and all that. And the sanctuary itself is struggling because of no fundraising the past year, really. And you know, they mightn't be able to take dogs from the council for much longer. Without them, we'd have to put down dogs and cremate them at an average cost of £200 per dog. So there's a big financial cost here as well to consider, especially when you consider the amount of dogs that are going to be needed to be took to the pound and all. Is going to increase. So the current model that we have for dealing with this isn't going to work much longer. It's unfeasible at this stage for it to keep going much longer, and that's not to mention the work the sanctuary do to keep the feral cat population down as well. So what I'd like to do, Chair, is I'd like to propose that John brings forward a report on how our dog pounds operate and how we interact with the charity sector, and how we do business with them, and looking at ways that we can potentially support charities as well, and preferably to bring that as early as possible, which would be September. But I'll not put them under exact time limit on it. So preferably September, but as soon as possible, because the model isn't going to work much longer, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for that, and been brief now. I have spoke to John about this, and I is happy that a report comes forward in due course. Could we have a seconder for that report?
Second, Chair, Mary here.
Okay, Councillor Garrity. Now that has been proposed and seconded, so very quickly, Councillor O'Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually going to raise this exact issue and almost exact same proposal, actually, under the paper E, where we actually talk about the number of dogs handed over to the animal shelter. Obviously, if we are reliant on a community voluntary organisation to perform tasks which are effectively part of our statutory remit, then I think it is only right that we take responsibility towards their capacity to maintain that in the long run, and the sustainability. So I'm entirely happy with the proposal coming forward, and thank you, Councillor Garnon, for that.
Thank you, folks. We'll move on now to item 6, Environment and Place Directorate Reports. 6.1 is to consider report on estates matters, paper C. That's Celine.
Chair, members, this is the monthly estates report, which provides an update at 2.1 through to 2.3 on matters for decision making and approval. of works at Market Street Arcade, Omagh. Ongoing discussions around the Earn Road at the former Earn Hospital site in Enniskillen connected to the workhouse project, also the new college campus, and also the Lakeland Health Village, and work that is progressing there to improve the signage and road markings, and in turn address hopefully some parking issues there, and an extension of the COVID testing facilities at Lisnelly Avenue in Omagh for a 6-month period. That would be up to the 8th of January 2022. 2.4 lists requests for use of property, 2.5 retrospective requests for use of property, and then at section 3 then there is the further issues then for information, and included in that, just of note, is some information which is detailed in the appendix about really, I suppose, a collation of vandalism issues that we've suffered on council property and public property that we have responsibility for across the district, which is I suppose, a worrying trend, and it does have implications both in service delivery and also about making those facilities available to the public. And then all of the other items are as usual. So happy to take any queries. Extensive list of recommendations is set out at section 9 on page 6. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celine. That's an extensive report, and members, please do be brief just on your comments. Now, there's a few councillors looking in. Councillor McElduff is first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair, I'd be happy to propose the adoption of the recommendations. But
Thank
just
you,
a couple
Councillor.
of questions. In relation to 2.1 Market Street Arcade, I very much welcome that. I had been speaking myself to the business owners there, and this will be very welcome. Any upgrade or environmental enhancement works at Market Street Arcade. So that's very positive, and it's a very important entry or pathway between the rear car park at SuperValue and Primark, etc., out onto the lower Market Street. So it's a really important arcade with some of the best and most unique shops in Omagh, I would suggest, in that arcade. And it really needs to be opened up to the public, opened up in a way that the quirky nature of the shops they're in are exploited and supported. Now that's Market Street Arcade. There has been various mentions there of Thornton Glens related matters. I'm just wondering if Celine could brief us as to when will the cafe be open? Will it be open, for example, this weekend ahead of the public holiday weekend or whatever? And if not, can we be assured of its imminent opening? And then in relation to 243, the Auto Fest at Omagh Mart, maybe to hear a little bit more about that. Has there been discussions between the council and Omagh Auctions Mart about that? I haven't been lobbied now by the organisers of the Auto Fest or anything like that. I'm just seeking information. And finally, Chair, in relation to vandalism 3.3, are there any ideas as to how the council can reduce and prevent this type of vandalism and graffiti? And we have listed, numerous items here, goes to 29. How much has this cost the council to date to repair or to remediate the vandalism or the graffiti? At what cost is this happening to our ratepayers? And can we communicate strong public messages that this council is intent on adopting a zero tolerance approach till vandalism and graffiti on the amenities that this council works so hard to provide? Thank you, Chair, for allowing me that. Thank you.
Do you want to take a couple more maybe? And yeah.
Sorry, members, I was muted there. Just we'll take a few councillors and then we'll come to Celine and some of those queries, Councillor McElduff. So Councillor Deehan is next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and my thanks to Celine for her report. And I too would like to welcome the upgrading works at Market Street Arcade. I think it is an area of our town that has been neglected and really had become very shabby. So I do welcome those improvement works. I did hear a very interesting discussion on Your Place and Mine the other week regarding the Gortin Glens, and Sean Harper, I think, was the contributor there, and made reference to the cafe and how he used to enjoy the facilities as a young person visiting his granny there. So I too would be keen to have an update on those works and when we will see that facility opening. In relation to the vandalism, and you know, this really does make for very depressing reading. Unfortunately, vandalism is a fact of life and has been a fact of life for many years. But it has reached a point where we simply cannot go on just accepting the vandalism and incurring the cost of remedial works. So I do think that something needs to be done. Chair, you recall that I had proposed that we get a little working group together involving all the relevant stakeholders so that we can come up with a definite plan to address this, because it simply cannot be tolerated any further. So I look forward to that group convening at the earliest opportunity, and hopefully we will inject some fresh thinking and fresh ideas into how we can address this very sinister developments. And I'm happy to second the report, Chair. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. You have declared an interest in a couple of these to do with Southwest College, but just to speak very briefly on a number of the others, and I'll not include my vote in the overall supporting or second and or voting for, just with those declarations in mind. But in relation to item 2.1, the Market Street Arcade, obviously anytime the word cladding is used, people's minds automatically spring to the tragedy that happened in Grenfell, and I'm just wondering, in terms of the materials that are being used in relation to the cladding in Market Street, what sort of protections or securities do we have that obviously they're as fire resistant as possible, given the dangers that some of the materials used can present. Sorry. I would definitely welcome the usage and a continued usage of the Gortin Glens at item 2.4.2 and 2.5.3, and again Mullaharn as well being used for videoing as well on an upcoming series that will be very interesting to witness, no doubt. In relation on page 3 to item 3.2 and the update on the gas to west, obviously that was something that I had opposed previously and continue to oppose, with being mindful that fossil fuels and the continued promotion of them isn't a sustainable way forward. So just to make a note of that. And again, just reading through and reiterating what the previous two speakers have said in terms of the vandalism, but some of the instances noted go beyond vandalism. You know, some of these things are quite dangerous. Some of them are actually life-threatening. You know, there's a couple of occasions there in Oma where it's noted that life rings have been stolen. There's notes of damage to accessible toilets, obviously, which is never acceptable. There's also notice as well to broken glass around play areas and on playing fields. You know, these sort of things really, they're more than just senseless vandalism. They present a danger to the residents of our area and obviously anybody who's visiting the area. So I would be very supportive in previous speakers and what they've said, but in terms of how we actually go forward in preventing this from happening again, to get the message out there really that, you know, we're talking about it at this meeting tonight, but it's really people within the district are suffering. You know, this isn't in anyone's benefit to see this continuing, to see, you know, the ongoing graffiti and damage to bins around the Gortin Glens. You know, that stands to no one's benefit. none of the things that are noted in this are anything to be proud of, and I think it's trying to get that message out to the perpetrators of these senseless and criminal acts and often very dangerous acts, and how we do that is, well, it's the
Yep,
question, the million
that's
dollar
great.
question. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you. Now, Councillor Tommy Maguire, please.
Mark, thank you, Mark. Just in relation to 2.2, I'm glad to see that discussions have taken place between college and the health village. But if I could raise on the side of that, I did propose quite a while ago that we, as Enniskillen councillors, should meet with the road service in relation to the anticipated impact of the new college on the road, the traffic flow on Cornergrade Road and obviously down Factory Road and indeed Earn Road. That meeting took place, but in the absence of the representative from the Southwest College, who in light of their planning application were left with a condition that they provide the traffic management impacts of the new college, and they were absent. I did request at the end of that meeting that a further meeting should be called. Obviously now, timescale wise, we're certainly not going to have that before the opening in September with our August break. But if I could ask Celine or some of the officers if they could communicate with the Southwest College in relation to the anticipated traffic flows onto the Cornergrade Road and Factory Row when they open in September. I'd be satisfied with possibly a written report at this stage, as I'm fully aware we couldn't fit a meeting in now, but the road service, we're pretty much leaving it to the college. So the onus seemingly due to the planning is on the college to provide a satisfactory traffic management plan for when the college opens. So I'd like to get sight of that again as the town councillor, and I'm sure all other town councillors could be included if that could happen, please, Chair.
Thank you. We'll take one more, Celine.
Yep.
Councillor Thompson, and then we'll just have a few follow-ups. Councillor Thompson, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Celine for that very, very comprehensive report. Indeed, that's one way of putting it. But I just want to welcome, Chair, item 2.1. Certainly the Market Street Arcade in Omagh was long overdue an upgrading, and I hear what Councillor McAleer has said about the cladding issue, but I'm sure our council officers are well aware of that, and that'll be taken into consideration. But I think that'll be welcomed by the businesses, the residents, and visitors alike, because it is a very important link from the Market Street to that car park to the rear of SuperValue. So that's very much welcomed. I do have concerns, obviously, and I have issued a press release with regard to that the vandalism issues, especially at Gorton Glen Forest Park. We have put so much effort into that over a period of time, and it's very, very disappointing to see vandalism be carried out in that area and in other parts of the district as well. There's no room for it as far as I'm concerned, and people need to, wise up really when it comes to carrying out the vandalism on our facilities and elsewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Celine, can I hand to you?
Yep. Thank you, Chair and members. So I suppose just taking them in order there as they're in the report, the Marketplace Arcade, we're actually seeking your approval to enter into the legal arrangements with the landowners, but we will then take responsibility whenever we do that. Absolutely, the cladding will be to all full standards. Members may recall that we have done a review of our buildings, and any cladding and issues there all were compliant and well above compliance. So I would not anticipate that would reduce in any way. On the second item, in terms of the Earn Road and the engagement there with the college, we can certainly communicate with the college and seek some specific detail then on those arrangements around and the traffic impact, likely impact, and what the arrangements are. I wasn't involved in that original issue myself, so I don't know any more further detail there at this point. The cafe opening at the Gorton Glens is imminent. There was some delays on in respect of the fit out of the building, just deliveries, as many businesses and organisations are experiencing delays, and currently the issue is just finalising insurance with the tenant. So I'm told that should be next week, once they're in a position to provide their insurance details. So that is hopefully very imminent. The Autofest at the Oma Mart. This is one where this event has run in different formats previously, and it's fair to say that it has probably grown to some degree. It has been considered by the Council's Safety Advisory Group, who feel that there is further work to be done on the health and safety issues, on crowd management, on just the actual activities and how those will be made safe. Probably not a COVID-related matter in this instance at all, but just literally the safety around vehicles and people in a limited space and area in that. So there needs to be a bit more development and professional input into the work that's around the safety of that event before. I mean, and I hope that will take place, and that there would be further engagement and it may be represented to council. But certainly the consideration of the safety arrangements at this point in time was that they wouldn't be sufficient, just from a general health and safety point of view, and they needed further work, and that is why it's not proposed to grant this at this time. The vandalism issue, yes, I mean, officers are equally concerned about the extent, the breadth of vandalism, and indeed just the wanton destruction, if I use that term, in some areas that we've seen. Again, I would be satisfied that for the most part we use very good quality materials, not things that are easily vandalised as such. So when it comes to reducing and preventing it, we do need to place the onus on the people responsible for this, and focus on the messaging, which, as the chair has confirmed, he has issued a further statement on that this week. So we will, now that we have been able to quantify, proceed to try and get some sort of working group in conjunction probably with PCSP around this and really related antisocial behaviour. It is a concern. It's a well-being concern as well, not just from a safety, but also concern about people who are involved in this type of activity, very much linked to our community plan and our outcomes in that as well. So I think that touches on most of the points that members have raised, and yeah, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Celine, for that. Now with Councillor O'Coffey's next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. First thing, I think it's a good innovation, I think, of Celine's to bring forward this listing of vandalism incidents. I think it's quite important, actually, that we keep it, if we could, even if it's only a quarterly basis. I'm sure there's a good bit of work to go into it, but it is very important, I think, that we have an opportunity to highlight the collective concern of the council about instances of vandalism. It's completely unacceptable, and this is genuinely quite a depressing list, but hopefully the message will go out and people will reconsider just exactly what they're doing. I did want to talk about issue 2.2, and Councillor Maguire got in there nicely, and I agree with what he raised there. I have to say the description given around the response to the traffic management around the new Southwest College is rather inadequate, I would have thought. The idea of proposed traffic management merely involving installation of directional signage and appropriate road markings, I don't think that that's anywhere near what is needed. And we also are obviously all collectively aware that there could be a potential, if the decision of our planning subcommittee or committee proceeds, there could be an additional 5,000 car trips potentially on that road. 5,000 shopping trips. That's potentially 10,000 car trips. at 93%. And that will also place even more pressures on an already congested route. So what I'm really saying is that we need to see a lot more done about this. I don't think there's been any consideration of the impact of all this development cumulatively upon the egress and ingress of people into the housing estates in this area, neighborhood renewal area, which means it's highly deprived. And there's already congestion. There's a primary school there. So it's completely inadequate that we have a solution that consists of directional signage. What we need is significant investment, and I think we need to be making that case perhaps to the minister. But I would agree with Councillor Maguire's suggestion at the very start. We need to see what SWC are coming up with. But frankly, I don't know how the planning got through, but for that. But whatever is coming forward, I'm not convinced of it, considering the report that we have before us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. And it's again on item 3.3, the antisocial behaviour. And I'm pleased to see that for information may become for action in it with the workshop. I welcome the workshop. I'd like to also support Councillor O'Coffey's proposal that the idea that we have quarterly reports, Celine, if it isn't too onerous to you. My question really, well, before I raise a question, I would be very sorry to see a review of opening hours and operational arrangements, because the vast majority of people, of users of these facilities, will suffer because of the actions of a very, very small minority. So I'd be sorry that it would come to that, and hopefully the workshop will address that. Really, I wonder, Celine, if you're able to tell me how many of these are funded projects that have been affected by antisocial behaviour, because a lot of work goes into attracting and applying for funding, and it would be really disappointing that these are the subject of antisocial behaviour. I think we all have ownership of the very, very fine facilities we have. And just in conclusion, I'd like to thank the officers for responding swiftly when damage has been reported. I'm sure, like other councillors, we've received a very good service from Parks and Open Spaces. So thank you for that, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to you on that, Diana. With three councillors there now, just Councillor McLaughlin is next, please.
Apologies, Chair, I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, sorry, John, that's okay. Councillor Wilson.
Chair, yes, I just wondering whether, especially in areas where repeat damage has taken place, would there be some of these areas, would they justify cameras? You know, this can't go on, because council has spent a lot of money on quite a Gordon Lanes and quite a few of these places. They would be quite a lot of times that there is nobody in the area and this is why the damage has been caused. But if these hooligans or whatever you would call them were caught on camera, maybe it would put a stop to some of this, and it's quite possible that this is the way we could have to go, and I would ask the officers to look at that and see what they think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Green there, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to 2.2, in around the New Southwest College. I have been on to the Chief Executive on this, but just to make a formal proposal, I believe the council should be whatever councillors are available to, and of course under COVID guidance, gets a tour of the new facility before it opens in September. I know, and I've noted before, that in old Legacy Council, Fermanagh Legacy Council, Councillor O'Reilly was a driving force in getting this up and running, and I do think that the council should be given the respect so that they are give a tour around the new facility. It looks very impressive, and I think it's something that should happen, and I would formally request that we make that request to the Southwest College. just on the traffic and all, I remember at the time when all this was being talked about originally, the footbridge was a very important element to this development. It was suggested that the footbridge would open up the town centre to the college, so that would give more footfall to the town centre. But again, the footbridge has failed by the wayside because of money, and I think it's something that we shouldn't let go. We should keep at it, and whoever we need to be contacting in relation to this, I think we don't need to let it drop, because talking about town centre and keeping it alive, it was an extremely important element to it. And as you could see, a footbridge from the college down to the town centre or down there would have been vital for the survival of the town centre. But that money seems to have ruled. So that's a couple of thoughts on.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Is there a few points you want to touch on?
Chair, yes, just a couple of points. Sorry, I was asked earlier and neglected to respond to a question about the cost of vandalism. I suppose the cost in pure monetary terms, I would estimate to be, a 5-figure sum, probably in the region of 20 to 30,000 at this stage of what you see on this page. Now that comprises of both materials and replacement units and items and that, but also time of our staff. And I know that members will have heard before whenever we talk about maintenance backlogs and things like that. And it's only now, having an opportunity to look at this myself, that I can see that, a lot of the work of even the normal maintenance work is disturbed and is knocked out by having to address these type of vandalism issues. So it does have a direct effect on other things and on our use of resources, which are diverted from where they should be to deal with this. And I would have to say, again, appreciate the acknowledgement of the staff who do respond excellently well, but it's very demoralising for them to go and see our good facilities being damaged in this way. In terms of the question around, I would reckon between 1/3 to 50% of the areas listed there would be projects which have received funding, which means that money has been brought into the district and invested in facilities here, and then unfortunately has been damaged. So all round, it's not a good story. The issue of security cameras is certainly one that can be discussed in the context of the working group that has been suggested, and I'm sure that's something that will be considered. Not always appropriate for everywhere, but again, sometimes can be a deterrent. So I think it's just, you have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, and indeed where there are recurrent issues there. Just a few comments further comments on the issue around the college, and in particular there Councillor Green's comments around the footbridge and that. There has been some very initial engagement with the college about a potential project in that area. I suppose the grass area there in front of the college leading on to then the footbridge and that, and whether that would be there's scope for maybe something in terms of biodiversity there. I believe that DFI would be the responsible government department for the footbridge, and I think some representations are being made there, but early stages possibly of some sort of project development there, which could add further value to that. We can certainly take forward the request for a formal tour of the facilities, and hopefully that is possible in the current environment. Just on the traffic issue again, just I suppose to finish on that, it is a tricky one, because that, if it was a condition of planning, then there is an onus and responsibility on the college to produce the solutions there. So we will have to ask them what the arrangements are. And again, I suppose time has passed from when the original application would have went in, and I'm sure there's other factors now that are impacting on traffic as well. So certainly the council has an interest as the site owner, and indeed as being responsible for the Erin Road area. but I can see possibly, realistically, there will, it will take some time for the issues to be worked out. And again, it does depend on how many, how the students present and how they travel and all of those type of things as well. But I would expect that it won't be just plain sailing in September. And
Thank
that's
you,
all I could say on that.
Celine. You've covered all them issues very well, and I think everything has been covered there, councillors, and thank you, Celine, for that. We had the overall report proposed by Councillor McElduff and seconded by Councillor Deehan, so we're all agreed, and we'll take on board the comments by members. The next item is 6.2, is to consider update report on the Forest Schools programme, which is paper D.
Chair, members, this is a better story. This is the Forest School programme, which has now successfully run over recent months on the basis of Council's previous approval for participation and allocation of funding. It's been oversubscribed in the district. There are more schools that wish to participate, and we're now seeking your support, firstly for some additional sums to allow our schools and young people to participate in this important biodiversity and related to climate change and environmental awareness programme, and secondly to authorise officers to progress with developing possibly a longer term partnership approach with the Forest Schools Association, with a view to setting up nature ranger centres within the district, and also just really taking that to the next level. So hopefully members will approve and endorse those proposals.
Thank you very much, Celine. Councillor Dan Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Celine, again for this report. And I'd like to thank all partners involved in this for working together to develop and implement this fabulous programme for the naturally curious. 33 primary schools applied, which indicates an encouraging interest and an acknowledgement of the benefits of outdoor learning and the natural environment. And in my role as chair in the last term, I was delighted to be able to visit 4 of the schools, and you'll see that from the photographs. And I saw it firsthand, the excitement, the curiosity, the imagination and the receptiveness of the pupils to this programme. On one visit, the highlight of the time out of school was the discovery of a wriggly worm, accompanied by lots of squeals of delight. So well done to the first 10 schools to participate. Thank you to the teachers and principals for embracing this programme and for their support. I really do think this learning will be embedded and brought home by pupils, and hopefully will be continued by the schools. So I propose that further funding can be approved to allow the remaining schools and any further interested schools to join the Forest Schools programmes. I think the photographs demonstrate really well how much the pupils enjoyed the teaching, so top marks all round. And I'd like to, with that, propose the 2 recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor McElduff.
Thank you, Chair, and commend Councillor Armstrong on her knowledge and understanding of this issue. And to make 2 different but separate points, again, I would highlight, Gorton Glens as a suitable location for a centre of this nature, and highlight the fact that there's an available classroom facility there, and also, changing places, toilet and changing provision, so that's going to be in its favour in the future and help to attract more people. The other point I would make is this: I wonder, does the Education Authority, EA, also have a responsibility in this area? Perhaps they could join in, add to the pot of funding that is available, Forestry Service, the Council and EA. And the reason I say that is when you ask the EA to do various things, they'll often say, oh no, that's the individual responsibility of a school board of governors, but not curricular support. And surely the EA has a biodiversity promotional programme themselves. So I think we should explore input from the EA in relation to their biodiversity responsibilities as well, and that they could become an additional partner. That's just a suggestion. And to second Councillor Armstrong's proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McElduff. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose, one of the questions I was going to ask was, had any locations been considered or brought to mind just in relation to hosting this? Because I suppose the Gorton Glens is probably the one that does spring to mind, and obviously being a mid-Tyrone Councillor, that I would be fully supportive of that, and I'm aware probably of other facilities that right across my own DA that would probably be likewise, although the access to a council building maybe would be holding them back, the likes of Alan Cregan, obviously being one that would spring to mind as well. But no, just to commend the work that's been done on this to date, I think it is a great initiative, and for something that was only starting out new in this council area to have attracted the interest that it did and the participation that it did is highly commendable. And I think the fact that, you know, the local primary school here in Loch McCrory was part of the first group, and I see there's St Oliver Plunkett, St Baron, McClintock Primary School and Seskinore are both up for the next round is very encouraging from my own DA. But the question I suppose then I would like to ask is in relation to the points noted on page 3, and it's the recommendations 8.3 in relation to the budgetary allocation and the use of council staff. I'd just like to ensure that we're through providing this additional access to council staff, that we're not sort of losing out on access to our own council staff, because I know from attending biodiversity meetings and meeting with the group and the staff that they seem to have a fairly tight workload on it at present. So is this to employ new member staff, and then in terms of a new member staff coming on board or whatever way they're going to be reimbursed for that, just to make sure all boxes are ticked so that we're not really at a disadvantage within the council as part of this? Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. And Councillor Feely, have you a comment or two there?
Right, thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief, and I'd like to thank Celine on the report as well. No, and it's just, and Councillor Armstrong hitting it, it's just a pity that all the schools didn't get a chance to take part in this. Like, it was a very good initiative, but hopefully they can take part later on. And somebody like myself was living so close to the forestries, I'd be spending a lot of time up there. There's some of the young fellas took an interest in fishing, so we up there in Loch Devar there, and I know there's a lot of talk about the Gorchin Glens, but we'd be spoilt for choices to have a place to have a nature ranger centre like we have in my own area here at all, just Loch Devar, the Claddagh Glen and the big dog forestry. So would it be possible, Selena's just mentioned that we could have 2 places maybe in the district, or is that asking a wee bit too much? There's such a big area of a district here, like we could have one maybe in Fermanagh and one up in Oma, but like we are spoilt for choice, we'd have plenty of places for them. I was just wondering, is it just only the one we can have? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Feely. Celine?
Chair, members, just a couple of points there. First of all, Councillor McAleer, I mean, yes, I've attended the meetings or been participated in the work that's been going on in biodiversity, and I do believe we need to increase our resources allocation there, and this is one way that I'm hoping to do that. It will correlate with an additional budgetary sum that we'll be seeking your approval for as well, and yes, it relates to additional staff resources that we want to put in to help, as it says in the report, with this and other biodiversity initiatives. So it's over and above what we currently have, and that's what I'm asking for your support and approval for. In terms of the number of the facilities, I suppose I would ask for members, you know, for the opportunity for officers to engage and work through this now with the Forest Service Association. They have a limited budget. It does depend on, I suppose, a match element in kind from us in terms of providing the space. If we can identify areas that they're able to work and that we can provide the space, of course, we'll look to maximise that. So early days on that yet, and I don't want to be identifying any specific locations, but obviously we'll keep members informed as it progresses in that.
Yes, thank you, Celine, for that. So we do have this proposed by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor McElduff. Are we all agreed? All agreed, members, and we will explore with the Education Authority as well the comments by Councillor McElduff. Okay, Councillor Coffey now very quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for letting me in there. It's just in regard to 8.1, just to clarify that the £12,000 figure, that is obviously not anything remotely associated with an annual wage, I take it. Thank you, Chair.
I don't think so, Celine, no.
Members, no, that's part of an additional sum of budget that, along with another additional sum, will go towards a post. So, I mean, I would ask that the members would let us work through that detail, and you know that we will seek the appropriate approval and authority from you on it. It's
Okay.
not a salary, no.
Thanks for that clarification. Now, folks, the next item number 7. These are the reports for information. So please bear in mind these reports are for information only. So item number 7 is the Community and Wellbeing Directorate Report 7.1 to note building control and licensing report for the period 21st of May 21 to the 24th of June 2021, paper E. And you have had a chance to view the report. Can I ask for a proposal, please, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, John, for the report. I propose the noting of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor O'Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second the report, but I would just like to request in regard to street trading regulations, page 3. I understand that the council has a role in allocating street trading licenses for ice cream vendors who obviously operate mobile services. Now, that's fine. I have obviously no issue with that. My understanding, however, is that there's also an allocation of where certain ice cream vendors are allowed to sell and where others are not allowed to sell. And I would just like to have a little short, brief report on how we allocate these patches, if we get sales patches for each of these vendors, and whether all, in particular, for example, are there any considerations of geographic distribution, social need, and so on and so forth, just to see how we actually what is the process under which we allocate these patches to the various vendors. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I got the nod from John there, so we'll have a look at that for you, Councillor O'Coffey. And I know John did send out an email earlier today around the street trading, isn't that right, John? Yeah, but that was a separate item. Yeah, Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Good, Mark, and again supporting Donal in his request. I think I'd appreciate that information as well. But just in the report, again, we have attacks on people, 5. Now 5 attacks on people, and we've had several discussions over the months and years now about people who were savaged by dogs. Maybe when we get attacks on people, we could get some feedback as to the extent of any injury, because I believe, and Councillor McCloughery would be more informed myself, there was a case where who the responsibility and all the rest of it of following up the case was difficult. But just if we could get some description of the extent of any physical damage to the people, because I'm aware that in a lot of the good work we've done with dog owners across the district, and the 2 dog walking areas, anytime I see the one in Enniskillen, it's widely used, and I'm very satisfied to see that. But I do say at this public arena quite often, whereas we have a lot of dog lovers and dog owners, there are quite a considerable amount of people that are afraid of dogs not on a lead, dogs barking, dogs baring their teeth in various ways. And again, the famous remark of all the owners is, he will not touch you, to which I usually reply, you mean he'll not touch you? So just to raise the issue of the number of people across the district who are not happy to encounter dogs off leads, and certainly when we see 5 attacks on people, I would be concerned, as I do believe the 2 dog walking areas and all the other good work we've done. We've certainly been working with the dog owners, but I have a sympathy for the people that are being attacked. I'd just like a bit more detail in, as I say, an attack could be a simple barking situation, or does it lead to some physical damage and maybe even hospitalization? Just a wee bit more information on that, if at all possible.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire.
Yes, Chair, certainly we can provide, as part of the monthly report, we can provide details on indeed the last 4 or 5 elements: the attacks on people, attacks on livestock, attacks on other animals. We can provide details of those in the detail of the body of the report. And in relation to this month's report, we'll provide that to members following the meeting here tomorrow.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, John. So I had proposed by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor O'Coffey. Are we all agreed with the report? Thank you, members. And that additional report mentioned by Councillor O'Coffey, that'll be brought forward and supported by Councillor Maguire as well. All right, thank you, John. We're on to item number 8, Environment and Place Directed Reports 8.1 to note the report on the implications of the Extended Producers Responsibility Scheme, and that's paper F. And again, members, this is for information. We've had this report before us, so could I ask for a proposer, please? Councillor O'Coffey, hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to say, there's nothing really in a sense that problematic with this, but I am a bit nervous of the implications of such a policy as is being proposed in regard to the implications of this charging for producers of plastic. Now, we obviously all want to see removal of plastic, and I personally want to see, as most trade unionists would, a just transition to a better, greener economy. But I don't think the sort of proposal in isolation is actually going to do a huge amount. For example, we have in our constituents, or in our council area, producers of employing quite a few people, over hundreds anyway, of materials which probably would fall under the ambit of this. Huge investment. And the likelihood is, considering Brexit and so on, that we could well see those jobs evaporating if we were to impose quite onerous taxes really on the sector in isolation from other potential competitors, let's put it that way. And for example, you could quite easily see major companies, I won't name them, relocating production for Northern Ireland outside of Northern Ireland. And even production which is currently done in Northern Ireland, maybe going to a GB market. Certainly under Brexit regulations, the GB is no longer under the terms of EU statutory law, whereas we have to bring these in. But we could potentially lose out on that trade. And I think that this is a concern. It's also a concern why this is only being imposed on producers, not retailers. Why are retailers, who make all the major profits in the consumer sector, they're getting off scot-free about all the plastic that they manage to sell, but the cost is going to be loaded onto the producers, many of whom are obviously have are going to face competitive prices from the likes of third world countries, Britain itself, and so on. So my concern really is that it's not reflected in this report, the potential adverse impact that this will have, in particular on a number of large-scale manufacturers of plastic in this area. And I would like to see action by Stormont, in fact, to guarantee any workers that are going to be affected by this, that there will be found alternative employment through intervention from Stormont. That's the sort of just transition that we want to see. Workers need to have guarantees that they will not be the ones that end up paying the price for moving to a cleaner economy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for them comments there. Councillor McAleer is next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would have similarly a few concerns about this, and I note Councillor O'Coffey's concerns, and particularly the impact on the workers that this has the potential to create. The focus on the producer, and I think there has to be a similar focus on the retailer, as he has said. I think in relation to noting under 1.3 there, the introduction of clear and consistent labelling for recyclability. Again, this is an issue we've discussed before. The fact that things can be labelled as being recyclable, but the actual facilities or the ability to do that isn't as easily available, and hopefully that's something we're looking at in conjunction with other councils in terms of improving or providing. And again, I know we've hopefully an upcoming meeting with Kicks County NI for the recycling of materials that are less widely recycled. I note as well under 2.3 and again I think Councillor Coffey kind of referred to this, but there's a note there that in doing this it will incentivize producers to reduce their use of packaging, adopt reusable packaging where reduction is not feasible, or easily recyclable packaging, and fund recycling and management of single-use packaging. The flip side of it is it could lead to an increase in price or an increase in the end charge to the consumer, which obviously needs to be mitigated against as well, because we're trying to make this work in a just and fair way. And I think as well the additional the note under 2.4 is a positive one. The additional incentive to reduce packaging and encourage the uptake and the reuse and refill models. That's obviously something that the council as a whole has been working towards. But I think, yeah, just in relation to what I was saying previously, 2.6 there, it says to ensure what more of what is collected is actually recycled, and I think that is kind of the takeaway from this, because we have seen before, and I've kind of queried the stats in terms of the percentage of what is being recycled or left out for recycling on our curbside, and what actually ends up being recycled is questionable. And I think there has been questions asked in relation to that. So we need to do something that it's going to have an actual impact and a positive impact at that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Deehan there, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, notwithstanding, Chair, the comments of Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor McAleer, which have some merit, I am actually very strongly in favour of the scheme. I have long been of the view, and have expressed it for many, many years, that we need to address packaging and the production of plastic products. And this, I feel, is a reasonable step in that direction. I do accept that retailers also must approach this in a very responsible way and share some responsibility for the gross pollution of our planet with plastics. And plastic is a very useful product, and it has revolutionized our lives in so many ways. But none of us could have foreseen the terrible devastation that overuse of plastic products has visited upon our planet. And our oceans are suffering, our forests are suffering, every aspect of our lives are suffering beyond measure. So drastic situations require drastic solutions. And I think this is one small step towards achieving what we must see as a very urgent priority in terms of environmental protection and sustainability. So with those comments, Chair, I want to propose and welcome the noting of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair. I do find myself supporting Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor McAleer, believe it or not, because I see they're standing up for producers' rights, and I have been standing up for producers' rights in agriculture for years, and it's good to see that somebody else is going down that lane. I do see produce or packaging coming on our farm. And I do believe that in a lot of times there is excess, a lot less would do, and that all has to go into our bins and be taken to wherever it goes. So it's difficult to know, but yes, I think a bit less packaging probably would do, and I would support the producers' rights. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly is Councillor Siobhan Curry, please.
Yes, Gormagad Carley, thank you. Just to add my support, thank you for the report, and I think it has been seconded, but if not, I'm happy to second it. Have been points made. I think the main thing is, yes, a just transition is very important when we're dealing with issues around climate action and wider environmental issues. That is very important, and where we are now, and we have declared a climate emergency in our council, we have to react, and we have to react now. But it's important that we do that in such a way, and this is wide scale, total societal change that's required, but it's very important that that is done in a just way, and why the just transition is important. I think the producer pays principle. I take the comments about the retail when in reality we know that the producer will pass those costs to the retailer, and they will be passed to the consumers. And you know, we are already seeing, you know, public reaction to what is really a disgraceful situation that we're living in at present, with the amount of over packaging that is going on. We've had reports to this council in the last year about the amounts of from online shopping and what impact that has had on our council. And we see it every day when we're out shopping, the ridiculous amount of over packaging around products. So I think this is a positive move. I think there's a lot still here to be seen how this will actually impact on us as a council. But I would hope the effect of this will be actually a reduction in packaging. Let's not forget, you know, we say it time and time again, recycling is all very well. And I do agree with the comments around some things are marked for as recyclable, but we are only able to recycle them. But it's a last resort. The first port of call is reduction, and that's where we should be. That's where we, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. That's the order. So we need this to bring up that reduction about.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Curry. And I think I will take. I don't think there was a seconder, so that is proposed by Councillor Deehan, seconded by Councillor Curry. Is there any dissent, or are we all in agreement to that for noting? Okay, thank you, members. We'll move on now to item 8.2, is to note the curbside collection data. There's a lot of data in this report for 2019 to 2020, and Celine just wants a few points on this. Thank you, Celine.
Chair, members, I suppose this report is the third instalment in the story of waste that we have been reviewing over the last number of months, and I suppose the overall purpose of that is just to give us a perspective of how our waste is generated, and how much waste and where from, and the types of it, and then that hopefully will inform further and future decisions. So last month specifically we looked at the household recycling centres, and we learned that 34% of our waste roughly comes from the household recycling centres. The remainder, 34,000 tonnes, is lifted through our curbside collection, which is really our household collection service for to households across the district. What that actually looks like is 18,725 tonnes of residual bin waste. That's the grey or green bins, grey or black bins. Just looking to John here just to confirm the colour here of the residual bins.
Green and black is
green and black stroke grey bins are the yes, the residual waste. And I suppose the key point of that very significant amount, over 50% of the waste that's collected in households is you know, in terms of disposal, as has been described before, that either goes to landfill or it goes to RDF, which is incineration. That's the only routes for it, unless that it is then, you know, there is not a means or ways of trying to recycle that waste at this point in time, further than what's available. 5,300 tonnes of brown bin waste, and then 8,800 tonnes of blue bin waste, which is the recyclable waste. There then is a little bit of information there. You can see the trends. So the trend there has been that our waste volumes have increased. The household waste volumes have increased, but within that, our blue bin waste volumes have increased as well. There was, you can see there, for a number of years, 15-16 through to 17-18-19, a downward amount of the black and green bin waste, but it has tipped up again there in 19-20. I would say this information is the last complete year for 19-20, which is for 19-20, caveating it that it is somewhat out of date. The 2021 picture is again different, and we're waiting for validation of all of those figures through the NILA system and others. But we are in the pandemic situation there, and without doubt these volumes will go up, and most likely all of them go up. So a gradual decline there, but then more recently just a bit of an upturn, whereas then the recyclable materials have increased during that period of time. We've tried to look at a bit of recycling against other comparator councils in Northern Ireland and across the UK, and also then looking at, in particular, rural areas and councils. So in relation to that, this is a complex table, but our volumes are along the top, and those volumes are in kilograms, yes, kilograms per household per year. And then the comparators are in the sections below. So in all instances, because this is recyclable materials, we want to be above the comparators. And you can see that where we are, that's green, and that's good for us. And then where we're below, that's a red, and that means that we're performing below the figures there. So there is the 6 core materials which are listed there, 1 to 6, and then overall in terms of recycling, textiles and food are also considered and also included there. The main areas, I suppose, for improvement would be in the mixed packaging and the glass, where we would see the cardboard as well there, that there would be room and scope for improvement. But again, some improvements have been shown. The other interesting part in this document is some information about our refuge vehicles, and that's obviously a key part of the service that and how the curbside collections are done. And this is particularly interesting in the context of the climate change challenge. Because some of these figures are eye-watering in some ways, but so across the district we do between 500,000 and 600,000 miles per year in refuge collection. 171,000 miles of the pod vehicles, refuge collection vehicles 243,000, and then other separate food waste vehicles and side loaders another 157,000. But there are standard refuge collection vehicles are averaging in terms of fuel 3.8 miles per gallon, and that's just because of the sheer weight and also all of the machinery and the equipment and the safety issues around those vehicles. So we can't underestimate when we look at our climate change action plan and we join up the dots of what the council is doing, that this is a very significant generator on our own carbon footprint. Equally, if we increase the refuge collection services, those numbers and figures are going to go up. So that is a consideration for members in terms of the service and what that looks like. That said, the vehicles have been modified and have been developed over a number of years, and that there to reduce pollution generation and that. But in so doing that, the implications there are that it reduces the tonnage of waste that the vehicles can carry, and that then in turn has implications for the routes, and then again the implications for the miles, because if you have to have shorter routes, you have to have more miles, you have to have more vehicles out. So it's an interesting and complex area just to get the balance of all of that right, and certainly each action has a consequence, both in environmental terms and also I suppose in cost terms as well. Also very important is just noting the health and safety issues. This is considered by any standards a high risk area, and our vehicles are working in tricky conditions. Particularly, I mean, issues have been reported by the drivers around double parking, triple parking, lack of turning areas, as well as just, you know, all of those things, you know, do affect the ability to deliver a good service. But we do, you know, in terms of refuge collection, our services is excellent, and all, you know, the numbers of missed bins relative to any other benchmarks is extremely good. There are various operational safe systems in place and processes to support health and safety, but it does remain probably our highest risk area across the council operations. So appreciating that this information, this is just for information, what we are looking at in the area of waste is to see whether we can use this information and other information in the context of the EPR and the potential opportunities for other funding, to perhaps look at some pilot projects to see how, you know, pilots maybe around a number of households, different approaches, and that ultimately to generate better quality recycling materials and, you know, and to operate a good and an effective service.
Sorry, folks, I was on mute again there. That was a very extensive report. Thank you, Celine. We'll be looking at proposer and seconder for noting. Councillor O'Coffey first there, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is an excellent report, very informative, and there's a lot in it. It makes for very interesting reading. There's a lot of important points in that certainly I was unaware of. Obviously, I note on the end of 1.4 that the council is facing a challenge in terms of attracting staff to work in the role, considering the long service and so on. And I think that's an important thing to remember as we move forward. In terms of the issues around the bins themselves, I would like to propose that we would have some form of analysis, if possible, of we need to find out why it is that we succeed so well when it comes to plastics and cans and so on, but we are way below when it comes to paper, cardboard, and glass. So I don't know how we could do that, but perhaps if there was a possibility of including some sort of online survey or something, we need to find out why it is in our area that the rates of recycling are so much lower on those elements. It may be that there's something that we can't see at this stage, but it's of such a significant difference and differential that I think we need to have clarity on it. Equally, I think that the case is well made, and I do note all the extra focus on health and safety, which I am very much supportive of. I think it's that it's critical that we are leading the way when it comes to health and safety on this sort of activity. But equally, we need to, I think I would like to propose that we come back, we have raised this previously. Is it possible to have costings around the extension of a brown bin collection across the council area? Because I note from your figures, Celine's figures rather, that the cost is increasing. But is there a cost benefit analysis that we could quickly put together in terms of an estimate of what would be collected against the overall cost associated with it, extending the collection? So there's a huge amount in here. There's a lot more than I'm going to say, but overall, I think the figures are very positive, and I think everyone in the council area has to be congratulated on leading the way in terms of many of these 6 core materials. But we just need to see how we can improve on that when it comes to cardboard, paper, and glass. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. And I too would like to record my thanks to Celine for her report. Chair, an enormous amount of work has gone into the generation of this report, which really focuses our attention on the scale of the service that we provide in terms of waste management. It is so complex, it is so costly, it has such implications for our environment, and Chair, Celine is quite right when she says that some of these figures are eye-watering, that our refuse collection vehicles travel more than 500,000 miles per annum. So there clearly are environmental issues to be considered here. I was just wondering how have we planned to meet the directives on phasing out diesel and petrol vehicles by 2030. I mean, my experience is that electric or hybrid vehicles are extremely expensive at present and well beyond the reach of normal households. So that's something we have to consider and plan for. But I do think that as a council, we have been to the forefront in terms of waste disposal, and it's good. It's good to see that we are keeping this area firmly in focus. Later on in the agenda, I note the proposals to upgrade Gortrush recycling facility, and I welcome that. But you know, we have done a lot of work, but there is a lot more work to do. And I think shortly, Chair, we are going to have to engage in a debate in terms of our use of energy, of waste to energy, because we simply cannot continue to bury our waste in the ground. But a very useful report, Chair, and I'm happy to propose the noting of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, start by seconding Councillor O'Coffey's proposal if it needs to be seconded, and in relation to the brown bins, and I know that's something we've brought before, but and again, I'm happy enough to second the noting of the report in front of us. I think whilst the figures are overall, I suppose, quite impressive when compared to other UK fortnightly fully commingled collections with fortnightly residual collections. I suppose the question is how good are they overall? And I know that some of them are showing up in the lower quartile, I suppose, in relation to those mentioned paper card glass that I know we've maybe had discussions about before, and we've had or we're aware of issues in terms of the provision of that facility. But really, I think it has to be, we have to just speak and commend the staff that are putting the effort into it. It's well and good that the population of the area they recognise the importance of separating their waste, they recognise the importance of recycling and composting that. But it's the staff, the bin men and those involved that are out collecting the rubbish and that are working through it. And I think it is their efforts really need to be praised. You know, when you talk about one of the key components being the vehicles, I would suggest that probably the most key component is the staff. And I think again, it's probably worth minding that, you know, the task and finish that they're working to is probably a reason why we do have such a high collection and efficiency rate across the board. Just in relation to the previous comments, I'm aware that we're working towards the phasing out of diesel and petrol vehicles. It's how we replace those, and you know, there are obvious issues with lithium ion batteries. There's issues with electric vehicles, so we have to be mindful about what we do, that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul and ending up, you know, in no better a situation than we begin with. But as previous speakers have said, it's a good report. There's a lot of detail in it, and no doubt we could all talk about it for some length, but I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McAleer. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair. Well, I've noticed myself especially from the pandemic, that a lot of, as I've said before, a lot of goods that we would have collected are now coming by post and by bond delivery with quite a bit of extra packaging on them, and that all has to be disposed of. And I do notice quite and especially in the blue bin, that there is a lot of extra, and in fact sometimes it has to be tightened down to get in the extra that is there. So I believe that's a good part of the problem there. Now, Celine's report is really very useful, and it really leaves the councillors that have more aware of the direction that they need to be going on. But the report is to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And we do have, I was saying, we do have the report proposed and seconded. So just if we can keep your comments brief. Councillor Clark, please.
Yeah, well, Chair, I'll keep them brief. I think one of the problems with the paper is if it gets wet, it's unusable again. And we unfortunately have the right climate for getting it wet. And I don't know what you could actually do to make sure it stays more dry. I think, would that be a fair comment? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Siobhan Curry.
Margaret Kelly. I think Corey O'Reilly was in front of me, but maybe not. I'll go ahead.
I'm sure he'll give way for you.
And thanks, Celine, for the report, and thanks for all the information. There is a lot of food for thought there, especially around the transport end of things, you know, and you know how that can actually maybe nullify the work you're doing to cut emissions. You might end up you know, emitting more because of it, you know. So that is food for thought. But I just want to make the same point that I made just on the last item. These, when we're looking at the 6 core materials here, these are all materials to be recycled, and these are listed here in kilograms per household per year. And I actually don't think it's a bad thing if our numbers are lower in that. As I said just the last time, the key thing is we need to reduce. Recycling and recycling more is not something that we should be looking to pursue. You know, it shouldn't be about recycling more, it should be about reducing less. So just to bear that in mind with the figures too, because the overall figures, the general trend, we had a wee bit of an increase in the last year, and I think we'd all expect that with the COVID and more people being at home. But the general trend has been down on the general waste, on the mixed waste, and the general trend has been up on the blue bin. So, you know, when you look at it that way, I don't actually think there's much to concern ourselves with there.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan. And Councillor O'Reilly.
Delighted always to give way to Siobhan there, Chair, as you anticipated. Can I just say, also just want to come in on the same angle for my first point as Siobhan there about the reducing and being able to follow through on those that produce to, as in the previous item, to take more responsibility. And that said, Chair, the other angle on that, of course, is that through our recycling centres, we get a lot of very reusable stuff coming through, and it's about upcycling and to sort of see there is a lot of people that if some of this stuff was upcycled and that they could well benefit out of it. I remember going with, I'm not sure whether it was a council or some other organisation many years ago to Liverpool to look at how many families were helped by the ability to collect and upcycle and bring back into life different pieces of furniture and different types of equipment. So I'm just wondering if we can look at that as a way forward. And the other point that I wanted to quickly make, Chair, was just in that we're talking about the change from fossil fuel vehicles and that, and I know that we had made a little bit of an inward move towards electric vehicles, and I'm just wondering how that has progressed in totality as a new council. And I'm not maybe expecting that the figure will be readily to hand now, but that we might you know, be able to get some information on that. And this thing where we have a couple of charging points right throughout the different areas of the council, and some of them not working. And I know we're pursuing the company to put them in to try and get them to be working, but it really is
outdated technology, Chair, in my view, when you think that you can remotely charge a car over a plate in your driveway, and that we could maybe look at some way of incentivizing that a lot of these plates go into our off-street car parking facilities where you could park and pay for charging, or park and pay just for your parking. So there is new technology, Chair, there that in 5, 10, 15 years we're going to have to introduce, and maybe if we were looking at it now, there's an opportunity to be out ahead of the posse, as it were. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Riley, and that's food for thought.
Chair, maybe if I could just come back
Celine.
on a couple of points there, just to be, I suppose one of the issues at the moment and I mean, I've said that this will allow us to make decisions and start to make some plans, but we are really waiting on DAERA to set out their stall in terms of a new waste strategy for Northern Ireland. That will inform our current waste management plan, runs up to 2022, I think June, July 2022. It may be that we have to, if DAERA haven't set out their position in terms of what the key targets are, and indeed what the legislative requirements are around, for example, food waste and different types of waste, we may have to defer that for a period of time until we see the direction of travel for Northern Ireland. So that is relevant to Councillor O'Coffey and Councillor McAleer's point around costings of the extension of a brown bin collection. We can certainly start to look at that, but there is a void there at the moment in that is overdue, the waste strategy position for Northern Ireland, and again it's tied in with climate change and various other matters that are with DAERA at the moment. So we're actively waiting for that to inform what we do, or what we do next as well. I suppose the takeaway of this report is that when we recycle, for the most part, we recycle well, but members did touch on key first point is reduce and also reuse, and I would emphasize that as well. And the second point is there's no getting away from the fact that there is still a considerable volume of residual waste that is generated. So that means that when we have waste, we want that residual waste to come down, and more to go into recycling there. So it is a complex set of equation that works together, but the residual waste is still a particular challenge for us, as we know, and that is why the overall recycling rate for Northern Ireland has reduced below 50%, as we understand, in the current year. There has been some reduction for our own council in this year as well, although more modest. But it's really trying to reduce the black green bin waste so that it is minimised in favour of more active recycling of what waste we are dealing with. In connection with the fleet issues that were raised, members will recall that they recently did review and approve the fleet strategy, which does commit us to trialling and exploring the use of alternative fuel sources for vehicles, in addition to electric hybrids. And again, it's choices in all of these things. You might say we have to find a way through that will work both practically and operationally for the service, from a cost and affordability point of view, and obviously the sustainability and environmental aspects. Hydrogen is another aspect that may be relevant, and again we can look to trial on some vehicles. We can bring back some further information on the use of electric vehicles, which the council does actively use. In our depot enhancement projects, we have ensured that there is extra ducting in place there that hopefully does serve to future-proof for that type of technology in the future as it develops. And I know that in respect of Councillor O'Reilly's point, it is again actively a consideration in any council developments now you know, in order to, it's the outworking of our climate change strategy that we do make provision for the, you know, for future technology, be it in car parks or, you know, associated buildings. And we also continue to lobby DFI for the infrastructure generally to support that move. So I hope those are relevant points.
Yep, thank you very much, Celine. So the overall report there was proposed by Councillor Deehan and second by Councillor McAleer. We all agreed. Thank you, members. And we had a proposal by Councillor O'Coffey and seconded by Councillor McAleer that we look into that report on the brown bin. And Celine has mentioned that. Is that all right, Celine?
Will be informed by DAERA, you know,
yes.
so the timescale of that, I would like to see when we're likely to get further clarification around the food waste proposals.
Members are happy with that. Has everyone agreed? Thank you, members. The next report is item 8.3 is to note the report on Gordrush Capital Improvement Programme costs. And again, this is for information. It's just a breakdown report on the different phases, and it's just for noting, members. So, Councillor Deehan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Celine and her team for this report. Again, very exciting works which are planned for our facility at the Gordrush Industrial Estate. And it's good to see that phases 1A and 1B of these proposed works are almost at completion, and that phase 2 and phase 3 will be starting this summer. A substantial investment, Chair, phase 3, 790,000. And that is a huge amount of resources to be invested. I was pleased to hear Celine say in her previous item that going forward we are future-proofing to incorporate modern technology, and that extra ducting will be put into these buildings in the depots so that we can use them for future initiatives. So that's very welcome. Also, the re-roofing and upgrading of the depot office. And again, pleased to see that the council will consider putting solar panels into the roof of the depot office, and also welcome the improvements to staff welfare facilities. So this is all about making our waste management at these depots safe and effective, and I think that these measures will go a long way in addressing those issues. So all credit to our waste management staff for these initiatives. Good to see that our council has benefited greatly from external funding from DAERA, and certainly this is something that I'm sure we can all welcome. So I'm happy to propose the noting of the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deehan. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, thanks for the report with regard to Gordrush. It is indeed an exciting project, and you know, it's all about keeping our staff safe and the members of the public who use the facility, which is a very good facility at this time. Quite a bit of money being spent there, and I know Councillor Deehan referred to the DAERA funding, which was very much welcomed. I suppose I just want to second the noting of this report and all 3 phases of it and the 2 parts of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have the report proposed by Councillor Deehan and seconded by Councillor Thompson, and everyone in agreement. Thank you, members. We'll keep moving now to correspondence. Item 9 and 9.1 is correspondence received on the 15th of June from the Minister for Transport regarding a feasibility study of rail network to the west. So John did tell me that there's a detail on this coming through tomorrow night on the same subject. Is that correct, John?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. There is further detail on further correspondence with regard to the rail network at the RNC meeting tomorrow night.
We'll not expound too much on this just tonight, members. Councillor McAleer, please.
Yeah, Chair, with that in mind, I'm happy enough to note, I think the disappointing thing as noted in the letter, and again as noted whenever you were introducing it there, is that our initial inquiry was sent on the 1st of February and we were only getting a response now for the July council meeting, so that's very disappointing. But hopefully the news contained therein will be much more beneficial to our area. So thanks for that, and happy enough
Thank
to
you.
vote, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, Chair. I would be rather sceptical about some of the. One of them, and you've been saying this evening yourself, that the grass cutting is something that we need to get a move on, because as far as I'm told, there's only one tractor working from Oma and probably one
Sorry.
from Enniskillen.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just stop you a wee second? Maybe we're just on the first piece of correspondence. Are you maybe on the DERA letter?
Yeah, well,
Sorry,
that's really all I want to say. Anyway, just if I'll not come back again if you mind. Just on the potholes, that the grass cutting and the potholes are the two main things. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Now, Councillor Maguire, just again on the first piece of correspondence there.
Mark, thanks for that, Mark. And again, not overly impressed with the letter, but the sentiment of the railways into the west is very dear to my heart, given family connections to the railways, and I can still remember the railways, believe it or not. But when I see the letter, when he talks about connectivity to international gateways and connectivity between the major cities, I still would be sceptical that we're going to see a map of the railways of Ireland that show the railways coming in through Fermanagh up into Donegal, even up to Derry. I'm very sceptical of it all. It's a desire I support entirely, and the potential benefits to the local people and the environmental benefits obviously going forward. I'm very supportive of all the sentiment, but I'm not impressed with the letter, because it's basically saying we're doing this, but it's all going to be with our international gateways and major cities across in the east of the country. But we live in hope.
Yep. Would you be happy to second that, Councillor Maguire, the noting?
Oh, quite happy, yes, Chair.
Yes, thank you. So that's proposed by Councillor McAlee and seconded by Councillor Maguire. Thank you.
Chair, I wasn't aware you were talking to do with the railways. Can I have 2 words on that as well?
Yes, very quick, Councillor Wilson.
Well, I was always aware that if you started a job, you would finish it, or else you would forget about it. And there has been a lot of money spent on that all regarding A5. And I would have thought that either complete that or else forget about it, rather than take on another railway project. So that's really my opinion. There's a lot of people out there whose property is sitting on hold, and I think they should at least complete one before they commence another. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We do have that proposed and seconded and agreed. The next piece of correspondence is from DFA Roads members, and you'll be aware there's a meeting coming up. I think it's on the 17th of July with DFA Roads. So again, this is a letter for noting. If we could have a proposer.
It's the 19th of July, Chair.
Sorry, the 19th of July. Thanks for that. Can we have a proposer for this piece of correspondence? Councillor Thornton and seconded by Councillor Erskine. Thank you, members. 9.3, there's no other correspondence. Celine or John, no. And just on any urgent and relevant business, Councillor McCaffrey did contact me. I'm around an issue or two, so I'll let you in now. Councillor McCaffrey, if you can be brief, please.
I'll be brief, certainly. Yes, just 2 matters that I want to raise, and I appreciate you allowing me to raise them here tonight. The first is regarding the Swanton Bar River. The Swanton Bar River is a river which transverses both the County Fermanagh and into County Cavan. Earlier in the year, I had made contact with DFI Rivers Agency, and we had a site visit out at the Swanton Bar River. Although the issue that has now emerged, and perhaps it's a reflection on partition and how border communities are indeed left into last, it transpired that DFI have no responsibility at all for the Swanton Bar River, and Cavan County Council apparently will only maintain parts of the river that go along the roadside. Now, the reason why I'm raising this is that 2 properties on the Gortora Road, just outside of Connolly, are being affected by riverbank erosion. Previously, there would have been mitigation and protection measures put in place. I do believe that that part of the Swanton Bar River was part of the former checkpoint, and as such there were mitigation measures put in place at that stage in time. However, we've long moved on from those days. The fact that this is a huge river, which, as I say, crosses the border at various points, but that in the County Fermanagh side, that there is no responsibility by rivers agencies whatsoever, despite the fact that it is now getting quite close to those two properties I mentioned on the Courtoral Road. And we've had them out. The basic answer was it's not the responsibility. It's no fault to the staff at rivers agencies, but I think the matter does need to go further. So I am proposing to the DFI Minister and perhaps this relevant director of rivers agency that some of the council officers may be able to point me to, but I am proposing that we as a council would seek that the DFI would adopt responsibility for the Swanton Bar River and the protection of its riverbanks, as it does go past many properties on the Courtoral Road. Margaret.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Feely, are you seconding that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I just want to say one sentence as well, Mark, when I'm seconding that. I'm on the same issue here of the same river that comes down to Belcoon, Black Lion, where the old railway line that crosses the river there has collapsed into the river, and it's flooding a farmer's field there in Belcoon on this side. And I've got onto river agency as well, and they have put the blame onto the south as well, and took no part in it. So I would think, as well as getting onto the agencies, we want to be getting onto the Officer of Public Works in the south to see can they look into this problem, because I'm at this for years now and coming no head with it, and I'm glad that Councillor McCaffrey has took this up, so I'm willing to second it as well. And if we could contact the Office of Public Works in the south too to see what they're doing, because they are over the rivers in the south, I think. So just put that into
Thank you, Andy. Are you
I'm
happy
happy
enough?
to incorporate that into the proposal as well.
Yep. Are you happy
Charlie?
enough with that proposal, John? Yep. We've got that information there. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I obviously anything that ameliorates the situation is useful. I'm just wondering whether this falls to Waterways Ireland, which is a cross-border body. They have a lot of responsibility for waterways in general, so that may be what's being referred to here. Just one other point was that my understanding was that the Ministry of Defence had 10, 12 years ago written to I think to state that they would remove the remnant of it that was responsible for the flood at Belcoo, and that but there was I think there was issues around ownership at the time and so on. But my understanding was that because they were responsible for it wasn't a bridge collapse that was blown up. They were responsible for this. That they would take action to ameliorate the situation. But as far as I know, nothing has ever happened. So
right, okay.
Just throw that into
Yep,
Councillor Feely if that's
thank
useful.
you, Councillor. And Councillor Baird, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In relation to Donald's comments about Waterways Ireland, I'm sure John's straining up the leash to point out that the role and remit of Waterways Ireland is in management, maintenance, restoration and development of the navigable inland waterways in Ireland. So I wouldn't have thought that this falls within the remit of Waterways Ireland, but John Boyle may wish to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baird.
No, that's correct, Chair. Waterways Ireland are only responsible for the navigable waterways, and they're listed in legislations. There's 7 waterways, both covering Northern and Southern Ireland.
Okay, thanks for that, John. Are members happy that proposal is carried? Any dissent? Thank you, members. And another brief one, just Chris had you as well.
Yes, I appreciate the support on the previous item, Macarja. Yes, the second matter is one it's very relevant also, and one that I've been contacted on quite a lot recently. It is the lack of availability of theory tests in Enniskillen or anywhere in the county of Fermanagh. The fact that theory tests have always been carried out at the Pearson Centre in Omagh on Market Street. It may have fulfilled the needs in the past. However, it's quite clear now that the Omagh Centre does not have the capability to cater for the current level of demand that is on theory tests. Now, I have a close example of this. I was helping a couple of the constituents recently trying to book these theory tests. Some of these people are elderly people who have lost their license and are trying to go back and regain it. And, you know, even for young people, but people are being expected to travel, not only to Omagh, where the lack of availability is, to be honest, at this stage ridiculous, but people are going up to Portadown and even to Belfast to travel to do their theory test for their car licenses. Now, I don't know, for whatever reason, that Fermanagh or Enniskillen has never had a theory centre, but I would making the proposal that we write to the DFI, to DVA, and if there is a relevant person at the Pearson centres. These centres are right across the north. We have one in 2 locations in Ballymena, Belfast, Derry City on Factory, or sorry, at Queen Street in Derry, and also in Newry and Omagh, but there is in Portadown, but there's not one in Fermanagh, which, you know, I find to be scandalous. Given the level of demand that is there, and the unreasonableness that it is to expect people to travel as far up. I went to place a booking for a constituent last week, and it showed nothing for July, nothing for August, and nothing for September. So it would be October before that person could get their theory test. So I do think this is a serious matter. I know that many councillors will be in support of this, but I want to make that a proposal that we write to Nicola Mallon, the Minister, and DFI, to DVA, and also to the Pearson centres, that a centre, or the feasibility of having a centre in Enniskillen would be looked at. So
okay, thanks. Now, well, I'll have to declare an interest in that, members, but I think it'll be okay to chair it on. So Councillor Feely has his hand up there as well.
I'll be very brief, Mark, and just to second that proposal. I got 2 phone calls later to speak about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark, was it the same issue?
Yeah, I think most of them are held in Ballymena for some reason. It seems to be the one that you can get your earliest appointment is in Ballymena. So yeah, I agree with the sentiments.
Okay, and Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Yes, Chair, thanks for letting me in. Just a brief comment in relation to the backlog that there obviously is at the moment. Perhaps it might be an idea to suggest in the letter, is there an option for additional appointments rather than wait until we have somewhere in Fermanagh, you know, somewhere to deal with the issue at the moment? Might be worth asking the question.
That can be included. And finally, Councillor Thornton.
Yes, I fully support all that's been said. I've had people going to Ballymena, and
yes,
great. Thank you.
Yes, thanks all. And as all members agreeable with what's been proposed and seconded. Thank you, members. So we'll just ask now to pause for a moment. We'll go on to part 2, confidential. Can I have a proposal? Councillor Robinson and Councillor John Coyle there had his hand up. Will Councillor Coyle. Thank you. Okay, members. Celine, will you sum up first, please?
Chair, yes, in confidential business, the Council approved entering into appropriate legal agreement with the purchaser of the Loch Melvin Holiday Centre site at a nominal rent to retain use of a desk space there, which is related to the full fibre NI connection to the project, to the property, and also noted the inclusion of a 10-year clawback provision as assessed and advised by Land and Property Services, which would be invoked if the purchaser disposed of any part of the site during that time frame, and also noted that Northern Ireland Water has no interest in acquiring any portion of that site.
Okay, members, and thank you, Celine. That brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. And thank you all for your help tonight.
Chair, do you need a proposal for that update from Celine?
Yeah, proposal.
Yes, proposal, Councillor Deehan and Councillor Curry there has her hand up as well. Maybe that's what that was for. Is that all right, Siobhan?
Yes, no, that's why I had it up.
Thank you. You're keeping me right. So thank you, members, again, and to the team here in the Town Hall and the IT support as well. And I hope you all have a nice evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Chair, all best.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair.